Hello, wonderful. This is Sarah, and I'm here with Patrick Doyle. Gosh, an abuse survivor and an advocate of people now, of women, of children, of men,
Yeah.
of
Mhm.
of warriors, right? And you help women trying to work themselves out of a religious maze after a toxic relationship. Is that right, Patrick?
That's one of the things I'm really good at. Yes, because I speak church.
You speak church,
I was
yeah.
uh, I was a pastor for many years.
Mhm.
I planted a church. I've been in ministry a long time. Many people have discovered me through my videos on the Dove TV,
Mhm.
Christian radio and TV station. So I have a lot of experience, and I have enough experience to know that we have done a tremendous amount of damage
Mm.
in our effort to do good through following the Bible in abuse. We've actually created more harm. And so my membership site, Pathway to Hope, is really the result of me seeing the failure
Mm.
over and over again. And so what I wanted to do was create a safe place because once you start to get clear about this stuff and you start to see it, you can't put the toothpaste
You
back in the
can't
tube.
unsee it.
So,
No.
right. So then it brings you clarity, brings grief because now you're like, oh no, this is terrible.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
at that moment, the support of your community is imperative for you getting out. And what I saw was women would go to their community, church community for support, and they would get shame, they would get hardship, they would get rejected, they would get all kinds of unhealthy things. So Pathway to Hope was I wanted to provide a safe community where you could say, this is what's happening to me. And instead of getting advice, you would get, yes, we understand. Tell us more. We're with you. How can we help?
mhm,
And that to me is the fulcrum of somebody getting out. I,
mhm,
s- I say this all the time, but pain is what lets you know there's a problem, but care is what helps you deal with the problem.
mm. That's so beautiful. And
Yeah.
what do you think the problem is within church? Is it bad theology? Did we just get murky? Is it just everybody being jerks? What
Well,
is it? Yeah.
okay. Well, let's back up just a little bit because I believe that modern Christianity now has become, as a rule, not every place. So don't get me wrong. I know there's places where it's going well, but as a rule, what we have is the idea of conformity of belief. So when you go into a church, you can't be honest. You have to comply, which is
Mm-hmm.
very similar to abuse. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have choices. You have to comply. When I was raised in an abusive alcoholic home, my dad was violent. I didn't have choices. The only choice was comply or die.
Mm-hmm.
So you go into the church, and so if I'm a Pentecostal and I go to a Baptist church or or Presbyterian church, we're both Christians, but they're not letting me in leadership until I sign the belief statement
Uh-huh.
and I show them that I'm in line with their belief structure.
Mm-hmm.
And it's exactly the same going the other way. The Presbyterian's not getting in leadership at the Pentecostal church.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that is a belief structure that you have to conform to be accepted.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, and I don't know if you know this, but there are roughly, depending on what research you look at, right around 30,000 denominations of Christianity.
Wow.
Okay?
30,000.
So,
Yeah.
so
Well, which
here's what,
one's right? I'm just kidding.
well, no, see, that's exactly the question, Sarah. Like, right? So,
No, it
well,
is.
all 30,000 are saying the same thing.
Yeah.
We have the truth of God from the scripture.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
at 30,000, I don't think that's possible,
Mhm, mhm.
right? If
Well,
it's all true.
have you seen the statistics about that 8 out of 10 people consider themselves an above average driver?
Yes,
It's like
exactly.
8 out of 10. That feels like maybe that's not true.
Exactly. So
Yes.
what I have understood from that, so you got
Mm,
30,000 denominations, which I would then term brands. So
okay.
you have like Jesus looks like this, he looks like this. He's got 30,000 views of Jesus, and they're
Mhm,
all right in their own eyes.
mm,
So if you look at history, the proliferation of denomination did not happen until the mid 1800s. And
mhm.
that's because that was the first time in history that the Bible was readily available to anyone. And
Ah, okay.
and literacy was on the
Yeah.
increase.
Mm-hmm.
All through history, you had basically Catholicism, you had Greek Orthodox, you had, then you, after the Reformation, you had, Protestantism, but
Mm-hmm.
you didn't have very many denominations because either you didn't read and you had to trust the priest to interpret everything. So only 5% of the world could read.
Mm-hmm.
So as that changed, so in the 1850s, and then you got Gutenberg inventing the press, and that took, a couple centuries for that to like really proliferate. So now you got the 1850s, and you look at a chart of denominational explosion, 1850 just goes up. And so you go from, 3 or 4 to 10 to 20, because everybody's reading the Bible and getting their own idea. And they're saying that's the truth.
Well, and in so many situations, a woman is in a really difficult situation,
Mhm.
and she comes and says, "This is the truth of what's happening in my house." And then someone says, "Well, but that's not the biblical truth, so you're just going to have to put up with it forever."
Right.
Right?
So now you got theology
Yeah.
creating conformity to
Yeah.
abuse. Because
Yes.
here's the other thing. If we look at the scripture, well, guess who set the trajectory for marital ideas and relational ideas in America? It was the Presbyterians coming from England that wanted to set up a system of God in this new world.
Mm-hmm.
The Puritans were the ones doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what
Mm-hmm.
did the Puritans believe about sex? What did they believe about marriage? The Puritans believed that sex was only for procreation,
Mm-hmm.
and then you slept in separate bedrooms so as not to tempt yourselves. So
Mm-hmm.
they were saying that's what the Bible says.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, if you read the Bible, particularly Old Testament, David and Solomon, that's not what's in there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of sex in the Bible.
Oh yeah, as I was a kid, I was like flipping through Song of Solomon in church. I was supposed to be listening, and I was reading about goat hair and everything else.
So my point is that the Puritans also used the Bible to justify the genocide of the Indians.
Yes.
So
Well, and people use the Bible to justify slavery,
exactly. So what I'm
right?
saying is so you take that concept and you
Mm-hmm.
bring it to a woman who's being abused, and how historically have we viewed women in the church? And here's the theological difficulty that I see from my experience. We devalue women
Mm-hmm.
from a theological position. How many times have you
Sure.
heard somebody say, well, Eve was tempted, so she's all of a sudden we're going to take God's creation, his creation, and devalue it. And we overvalue the man,
Mm-hmm.
and we undervalue the woman. So what you set the church up to do is to be a factory of male narcissists and female codependents.
Woo, preach it, preach it. Yes, no, I agree completely. And
But
yeah.
that's based on theology and a devaluation of
Mm-hmm.
women.
Mm-hmm.
Which if you see somebody devaluing another person, you don't see God.
Yeah.
You see something else. It can be cloaked in God, it can be cloaked in theology, it can be cloaked in ministry. But I've heard 10,000 stories
Oh, I believe you.
in
Well, and
30 years.
there's such an idol of marriage
Yeah,
too.
that's the other thing. We have idolized marriage 100%. That is a truth. And so when somebody walks into a pastor's office, and I've done this, sorry, I not anymore, but I used to. When you walk into a pastor's office, the woman is automatically 90% responsible for the problem
Mm-hmm.
and 90% responsible for the solution.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter what the issue is. So if I'm a pastor and they come in and my goal is to keep the marriage together, I can't hear anything.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
don't listen to the story. I don't understand the nuances. And you and I both know that this is a issue of nuance. I say it all the time.
Yeah.
If we looked at one incident, one of the cuts you got, everybody would go like, it's not that big a deal. Why are you so upset? But if you looked at 1,000 of them, you'd be like, oh my gosh, that guy's killing you.
And that's my advice when women are trying to get help.
Yeah.
Because I think I call it the emotional expert, right? So someone's like, oh no, and then this happened, and narcissism and sociopath and this,
Yeah.
and it's so hard to get help if that's
Yes.
how you're trying to get help.
Yeah.
But saying, here's a pattern of cuts, here's a pattern of behavior, here are 5 examples.
Yeah. But you know what? if you walk into a pastor's office and say
No, I don't
that, they're
care.
like, that doesn't matter. You have to stay. What was the old saying? I used to say this. I regret it. Stay, pray, and obey.
There, there was someone, a
Yeah.
biblical pastor, and said
Quote,
if
unquote.
the
Put that in
yeah,
air quotes,
yeah,
would
yeah,
you?
biblical, right? Okay, so but that piece where it says, do not let the sun go down on your anger, and so first 15 minutes
Bad
of
advice, by the way.
bad advice, first 15 minutes of the first counseling session, and you're already saying, well, it doesn't matter what's happened the last 10 years.
Exactly.
Your
Forget
job,
what
if you're
what lies
Christian, you have to
behind.
forgive now.
Yeah. Forget
Forgive
what lies
now.
behind
Yes.
and press on toward the high calling in Christ. But if you look at the scripture, honestly, God was telling the Jews all the time, build an altar, remember. Because
Yes.
if you don't
Yes.
remember, you're going to lose context. Your denial gets bigger when you forget, which is what denial is, right? I'm denying reality. I don't think God in any way, shape, or form wants us to live outside of reality. In fact, I love what M. Scott Peck said in his book, People of the Lie. Denial is evil.
Yes.
Anyone living in a lie is evil. And so when you're in a relationship with somebody who's an abuser, what their problem is they believe their own delusion.
Yeah. And
That's
talk other people into it.
Yes. And that's why they can look you right in the eye. Very convincing, very, very emotionally connected to it. And you're like, and that's why women start to feel crazy. They're like, well, I'm pretty sure that's not.
And they seem believable because they're lying to themselves.
Because they're their first victim.
Yes.
So when you deny reality, this is the other thing that I love. Another quote from M. Scott Peck. He said, the avoidance of pain is the beginning of all unhealthy behavior. I wish that wasn't true, but we got evidence from centuries, right? So when we have a woman who's in pain and we teach them to deny it, we are crushing them.
Well, and okay, be long suffering, be patient, okay? But I cannot find the Bible verse, and you may know it better than me. I can't find the Bible verse that says we're supposed to help people become better sinners.
Right.
I can't find that verse. But if there is an addiction to anger, an addiction to selfishness, an addiction to rage, an addiction to, and we're all looking at these women and saying, oh, you should help him become a better sinner. You should actually cover up that rage.
No.
You should cover up, right? When we say it that way, I think it's kind of like, oh.
Yeah.
Well
the thing that I've said repeatedly, a lot of women repeat back to me that was helpful to them is when I said that if someone you love is harming you, the most loving thing you can do is stop them.
Yeah.
That's love. Long suffering, denial, rationalize, minimize, justify, avoid. That's all harm.
Yeah.
And so one of the things we teach in the church is exactly what you're saying. It'll be okay if you just cook more meals, you have more sex, you be nicer, everything will turn out. Lie, lie, lie. If we're dealing with garden variety difficulty with two people that care about each other, that might work. I still think it's bad advice even there. But there's a difference between difficult and destructive.
Love it.
And
go ahead.
What we're dealing with is people that are systematically
Yes.
destroying the soul of another person.
Yes. It's a pattern of destructive behavior, and it is soul sucking.
And I talk to women all the time, and I start to predict their abusers' behavior, and they're like, and I'm like, it's a pattern.
Yes.
Once you know the pattern, you can predict it. And then I want to teach you the pattern so you can start using it against them.
Yeah. Yep.
And get yourself free.
So what advice, because I know a lot of women hear something like 70 times 7, you're supposed to forgive 70 times 7. What advice do you have if someone is telling someone they have to forgive 70 times 7?
Don't talk to them anymore.
Now, it is a good thing I had not put that coffee in my mouth before you said that, because I would have spewed it all over this screen.
But that would have got hits. Come on,
That's true. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. And, the way I say it is forgiveness is not the same thing as access. God forgave all of us, but we don't all get to heaven.
Well, the other bigger distinction I make is forgiveness has nothing to do with trust or reconciliation.
Fair point. Fair
Okay.
point.
Look,
Yes.
if someone has broken your trust repeatedly, forgiving them is between you and the Creator. It has nothing to do with the relationship. That's a myth the church keeps propagating, that you have to forgive. That's not true. I don't have to.
They say put up with.
Yes, but listen, if somebody's mistreating me and they have broken my trust, it is a fool's errand to continue to trust them because they have proven they're going to hurt you. So you have to stop that. And that's very different and a completely separate process from a forgiveness. And listen, you can't forgive somebody until you know what the offense is. If you're telling yourself it's not an offense, you're going to be stuck. And this is the other thing when we start using God to justify denial.
Okay. May we talk 2 seconds about this, like spiritual bypassing?
Yes.
Right? Because if you're using God to enforce denial, because when I see so many, it's like, well, I know it's been this way for 30 years, but I'm just going to keep having faith.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, that's not faith. That's fear.
That's denial.
And denial. Yes.
So I call it, what you're doing is spiritualizing instead of living in the truth. So from my perspective, look, God does not live in a lie. God lives in the truth. The problem is the truth is insanely painful.
Yeah.
And that's why we spiritualize, because we can't handle that pain. Like I can't, if he's a horrible human being who's mistreated me for 35 years and would throw me over to the bus, run me over, and then blame me for it. That's exactly what you're dealing with. So that's part of what I help women do is come to that clarity and then have safety emotionally because they've not had any experience with that. And they got all this spin happening. I don't know how I call it excuse my language for a second, but I call it the shitty committee.
Oh, that's okay. No, you can call it the shitty committee. That's fine.
They get together and have a meeting. They start talking shit about me.
Yeah.
And abusers are usually the chairman of that committee. And so they're controlling you from the inside.
It's 2 against 1. It's them against you and you against you in your head.
Yeah. And they've installed that.
Yeah.
Through rationalize, minimize, justify, gaslight, deny, spiritualize, all of those tactics. And so for a woman to come out of this, to me, is always, grow a new leg miracle. It's just, I get very emotional a lot about it because I've talked to thousands of women and never one time, Sarah, have I talked to a woman who's been abused, who's mean.
Isn't it amazing? I say I collect the best women in the world, right? It's just, they're like so nice. And
so
you're just like, oh.
The tragedy to me is the beauty of this soul has never been appreciated, has never been cared for. And yet, in spite of the absolute long-term attempt to destroy it, it didn't die. And so when I talk to women, I'm like, so if that's the case, I say it this way. So you've been doing a gold medal Olympic gymnastics routine, but you've been blindfolded and being shot at.
100%, 100% agreement. Yes.
And look, you're still nailing it with a blindfold and being shot at. So if we take the blindfold off and stop shooting at you, how do you think you're going to do?
Yeah.
I don't have any worry about your future because of this courage, the wisdom, the hope, the intensity, the beauty of who you are that survived this. So once we pull the toxic out, I say it like this. You're a beautiful, fragrant, magnificent flower. Has great aroma. It's a beauty to behold. It makes its surroundings better. You plant that flower in toxic soil. And what happens?
Shrivels up and dies.
Not instantly.
No, not instantly. No, right? Not instantly. No.
So what happens we discover the flower, we pull it out of the toxic soil, and we put it in fresh, healthy soil, i.e. Pathway to Hope, your YouTube, whatever. And you develop a community. And what happens? That flower will naturally just, the fragrance comes back. So you don't have, I hear women say this all the time. I have to find myself. I'm like, no, the beauty of you is still there. What you have to do is be safe enough to allow it to come out. It's nothing you got to go look for.
I love that. Well, and I also want to point out, if someone's seeing a toxic situation, what's so frustrating is because it's a beautiful flower and stays strong. Then when you say I've been in a toxic situation, people are like, but you seem to be doing so well. And it's like, again, a huge testament to your strength.
Yeah. Well, listen, the reason why I'm making it look like I'm okay is because that's my role.
Yeah.
That's part of the abuse. I did it. Look, I was on the radio and TV in my community and region. I was a pastor who planted a church. I'm the relationship expert, and I'm in an abusive marriage. What am I going to say to people? I participated in covering up. And when people started to see the truth, they were like, what? I had no idea. Well, that was because I was good at covering up.
Because I was so good at it. Yes. Well, and that's what, even on these interviews, people are like, oh, you're so authentic. You're so this, you're so that. It's like, it's because I lived like this, like, shell-shocked version of myself for so long. Like, I don't have the energy to be anything other than this.
Right?
Like, this is just me all the time.
I now have sort of an allergic reaction to it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, it seems so sad to go back in the box, right?
But here's the other thing that I see with ladies is the cost of being honest is very high relationally. Because I lost people that I thought were my friends for 30 years. And not just lost, but I became the villain.
Yes. And
you go from 0 to 0 pretty quick.
0 to 0. And the church tends so often to align with the person who's following the church rules. Well, I've tried to get him back. I tried to work it out. I tried to this. I'm happy to go to counseling. I'm happy to this. It's like, whoa. Yeah. No, you're happy to put the mask on.
Yeah. And they're lying the whole time. Meanwhile, the abused is trying to tell the truth. But because of the theological structure of compliance being number one, the truth doesn't work. It just gets you in more trouble. Yeah. So that's why I say, if you go to somebody and they start using that stuff on you, you walk away. Do not talk to them. You shut them out. It's the only way to survive, because with the little bit of energy you have left, you can't afford to fight that.
Agree.
And so what I encourage ladies to do, if you could spend 10%, just 10%, 2% of the energy that you have spent on him, on you, whoop, whoop, we're going to make some progress.
Agree completely. You know, in my program, it's like, oh, so-and-so got a raise. So-and-so built a business. So-and-so wrote a book. So-and-so did this. It's like, yes. When you start solving problems that have solutions, instead of trying to solve toxic people problems.
Yeah. Which is like stabbing yourself in the eye to help your eyes see better.
Yes, agree. I do want to talk just a second on if there is a toxic person in the church. Okay. What does that look like?
What do you mean if?
Yeah. When? Yeah. But I mean, if somebody's listening. Many? Yeah. How many? If someone's listening to this, it's like, you know, he said this, she said this, you know, how would you begin to unravel that?
First of all, if you're in a toxic relationship, I would suggest you not go to the church. Just for percentage sakes, you have a much higher percentage chance of getting harmed than you do helped. Now, I know there are churches that get it and help, and I'm grateful for them. If you assess that and you go, and here's the key component. If you walk into an office of an elder or a pastor and you tell your story and they believe you, they pass the first test.
Yeah.
If they say, well, because, and you should have, what about your sin, just click off and shut the door and don't go back, and don't share a thing with them, because information to those people is ammunition.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And I don't care how many Bible degrees they have. I don't care how loving, I don't care what their prayer life is. I don't care about any of that. This is the other thing I discovered over time, is that we talk about, you know, the way we know somebody's a Christian is by the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, gentleness, kindness, peace, self-control.
Hold on. I know you're talking fast. I do not want to skip over that point.
Okay. So
the way someone is, you know, they're a Christian.
The way we did it through the Spirit, love, joy, peace, gentleness, kindness, self-control.
Now, Patrick, are you sure it's not taking pictures with the orphans?
Whatever.
Are you sure it's not how many times you're at church? Are you sure it's not how big your Bible is beside your bedside?
Those are all things that we lean on to say that we have the fruit of the Spirit. Okay, but I would say you looking at somebody and determining if they have the fruit of the Spirit is the worst way to determine it.
Okay.
Because
Uh-huh.
that can be faked. And it's faked all the time,
Mm-hmm.
faked most often by the guy at the pulpit.
Mm-hmm.
Because those guys are in a jam. They can't be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Their job depends on it.
Mm-hmm.
You liking them is high priority. So they're in an emotional jam. So I can't expect them to be honest. So that creates a whole system, right? So what reveals if someone has the Spirit of God is the Spirit of God.
Mm.
You can walk into a room and tell that. And here's the other thing is there's a huge piece of my program is like, my mantra is trust your gut, trust your instincts. I've never talked to one woman in all the years that didn't say, well, I had flags. My gut was telling me. But what
That's what
happened?
my book is about. It's called Toxic Person Proof. Clear the confusion and learn to trust yourself. And that's exactly, it's a whole section. Here's all, you do not need a list of red flags. You need to figure out why you're talking yourself out of them.
Exactly. And so if they would just pay attention to their spirit 2% more of the time, their life would radically change.
Agree.
Okay, but what we do in church is we tell a woman who's obviously, most of the time, part of God's gift to women is the fact that they are very sensitive spiritually. I say that as a compliment. That's a beauty.
Sure.
That's a beauty of a woman. And then we tell them to don't listen to it, just stay. So we talk them out in a spiritual sense of listening to what God is telling them.
Well, just die to self.
So, because we're so concerned about keeping the marriage together, we can't handle the fact that it doesn't work. Yeah. And listen, I love that Gretchen wrote the book, The Life-Saving Divorce. It's exactly what it is. You're going to die the death of 1,000 cuts in an abusive relationship. And here's the other thing, Sarah. You know who gets to define abuse? Is the woman who's getting it. It's not me.
Yeah.
It's not you. It's the person who, if you feel like you're being abused, that's all I care about. I'm going to take that seriously. I'm going to listen to that. And I have 2 rules that I keep telling women. 2 rules. Number one, no crazy allowed. Number 2, I get to decide what's crazy. Because that choice,
how's that work?
That choice being removed from us is what makes us abusable.
Yes. Yeah. Well, kind of like Lundy Bancroft, he says they don't have, toxic men don't have a problem with anger. They have a problem with you getting angry. Right? It's kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is that any kind of abuse removes your choices. Yeah. Whether it be spiritual abuse, whether it be emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, it's all. And so once my choices are removed, now I'm completely controllable. So this is why I keep saying, if your spirit is saying, we're going to follow that, and then we're going to create a community that can support you. And that's the way out. And I think that's where God lives the most evidently is when we're trusting our spirits, because like M. Scott Peck said, denial is evil.
So I've got another theological concept. Okay. We're going to get real serious here, real deep. Okay.
Good. I'm used to this.
I know. Okay. So, and I feel like sometimes the theology that is so dangerous to poke is that God, that people can change, because that's what the whole basis of the faith is, right? In Christian faith, it's like, once people get to God, they can change. Do you feel like that's one of the reasons it makes people so nervous?
I think that's a lie they keep propping up. If people can change, have you looked at world history? Have you looked at the history of the last 20 years? I mean, if people can change, then why don't they? So I say this to ladies all the time, I don't know. I don't know why your husband doesn't change. I don't know why I did and somebody else doesn't. I don't understand that. But clearly those are the facts. Both of my parents went to their graves stone cold alcoholics.
Well, I would say they don't change because they don't want to.
Whatever.
They're getting a very good end of the deal.
Well,
right? If you're getting your way all the time.
But I don't really care, Sarah, why they don't change. What I want to do is live in the truth that they don't.
Fair.
Okay. And that's where I see women. I call it, what I do is I ask women to assess the level of death in their relationship. 9 times out of 10, what I see is women who have been in a dead marriage for years. And so you've seen the movies where somebody has a heart attack and then the family members on them and they're doing CPR. They're like, come on, come on, come on. And then, the guy's dead, clearly not coming back. And they're just, oh my God.
Yes.
And then people around like, hey man, it's over. Yeah. So the reason why that person is doing CPR isn't because they're trying to help them live. They're doing it because they don't want to face the grief of the death. Mm. And this is what I see women doing all the time. They're giving CPR to this dead relationship, going, come on, come on. And instead of that, what I want you to just grieve the loss. Because your freedom is on the other side of the grief. And we talk about trauma bonds.
Yes.
Listen, you know what a trauma bond from my perspective is? You wanting something that's not possible.
Or wanting someone to be someone who they aren't. They just aren't. Exactly.
You're not living in reality. So if we stacked up everything they did on one side, and we then stacked up everything they said on the other, we took everything they said and just shoved it aside and only looked at the actions, what conclusion would we come to? If we're honest, we would stop giving CPR. Instead of giving all that energy to the dead relationship, give it to yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
If you spent 5% of that kind of energy on yourself, your healing would accelerate. This is why I think a safe community is so necessary. You have to find it somewhere. In today's world, you can find it in a lot of places. You got Leslie Vernon, you got Natalie Hoffman, you got me, Patrick Doyle, you got Sarah, you got lots of places where you can get it, because your freedom is not going to come because you try harder.
And your freedom is not going to come from figuring out why they don't change.
Yeah, because that's focusing on them.
Exactly. That's why I say, turn your head, like from them to you.
But again, you alluded to it earlier. There's so much training in our culture at large. And then you have even more specific training within the church. And that varies depending on denomination and all that. And then, so you got this woman who's got 2 layers of focus on them training. So when we start saying it, they're like, well, you know what? So you sure that's okay? Like the world's not going to collapse, And so we have to, I went through it. I'm like, if I do this, my entire world is going to die. I'm going to lose everything. That was my fear. And you know what I did? I lost a lot of things I didn't need that I thought I needed. Now I have a lot more clarity and a lot more freedom. And I live by those 2 rules. And I've said this to my own 2 kids, like, look, if you're going to be crazy, you're not going to be in my life. It would kill me, but you better check yourself before you wreck yourself, because I'm not doing it.
Agree. Yes.
Everybody.
Yes.
So if you allow toxicity, people will gladly treat you with it.
Yes. So
it's a huge, I know we just talked about it so quickly, but it's a huge deal. It's a huge process. And I say this all the time. It is just that. It's a process. So one day I feel 5% better. And then 10 seconds later, I feel 30% worse. And then I feel, it ping pong. But here's what I say all the time. If you're ping ponging, that's a sign that you're moving.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. It's
yay.
And you're opening up feelings. If you've been dead inside, trying to not feel those things. Right.
Suppress.
Right.
The only way we survive abuse is by denying.
Yes.
Every one of us had to build a system of denial.
Yes.
How we did it. So to take that apart is painful, because it feels like I'm taking part of my soul out. And it does feel that way, but it's also not really true. That's not really the true part of you. It's just been overlaid and hammered in. But it's not really the true you.
It's not really the true you. And you talked about women or people in general having a hard time with that idea, because within non-Christian cultures, when they talk about life after abuse, it's a lot of like, well, you deserve better, which is really hard. I agree with it. And sometimes it's a big bridge to cross if you've grown up in the church. Yes. And so I think of it as living in integrity. It is not within my integrity to allow other people to act badly.
Yes.
Exactly. Right? It's not within my integrity to help them become better sinners.
Correct.
It's not within my integrity to spread darkness into the world.
Right.
Right?
Right. Yeah.
Um,
But you see, I think what you're talking about is really important, Sarah, because
mhm,
I think that for each woman, there has to be a very specific framework for that, because each woman has a very specific context.
uh-huh.
And this is my other concern, is that you have to get into the context enough to know how to help someone come out of it. But when we do these big blanket things, and this is
Yeah.
the church,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's like none of the context matters. But
Mhm.
when your husband's, I don't know, uh, has very specific things that he does that no one knows about, and then the next lady has a whole nother set of specific things that I mean, I've heard tons of stories, and I'm just like, oh, I'm appalled at some of the stuff Christian men do
Mhm.
in the dark behind closed doors, and then go, get on the pulpit or do whatever they do, be a
They
great
grab
success.
that guitar,
Right, right.
I mean,
And so what I'm saying is that validation is important to be specific about, because that, when you say, like a woman says, I can't say I deserve it because she has
mhm.
10 years of training in the church, says
Uh-huh.
that's evil and selfish. Well, okay,
Uh-huh.
then we have to find another way to take that principle and put it out for her to be able to take it in, right? And
Mhm.
that's context specific. And that's
Mm.
that's the deep level work of being neck deep in the circumstance.
I
Um,
love it. Well, you've got some really cool circumstances coming up in your own life and
yes.
things you're creating. Tell people a bit about what you are doing now.
Okay, so I'm just in the process of, I just finished a book about emotional abuse. Title is not made yet, but the one that I want to call it, and I'm getting some pushback on it, but the title I'm thinking of is, Are You Crazy or Is He an Asshole?
I think that's fair. I mean, I think that'd be fine. I don't have a problem with your title.
I know, but I have a large Christian audience, so I don't know if it would help. But, and also the other thing I'm taking into consideration is when that guy sees the title of the book, I don't want it to be triggering to him. That'll put pressure on her. And so there's all that I have to think about. But anyway, that book's coming out soon. And I just finished developing a 501c3 charitable organization called Pathway to Freedom. And I'm going to donate all the proceeds of my book to the charitable organization. And in the next couple of weeks, my website for Pathway to Freedom will go up. If you want to check it out, go to my patrickdoyle.life. You can sign up for my email and you'll get all the information. But I'm so excited because one of the things I want to do, my membership plan is called Pathway to Hope, because hope is important. Otherwise, we just die. But the charitable organization is called Pathway to Freedom, because what we're going to do is collect money and then we're going to give it away to women in these situations. Let's say they need 6 months of rent. Okay, we got you. Let's say you need a high-powered, mean bulldog attorney. We got you. Let's say you need a private eye. We got you. You need a forensic accountant to figure out what the crazy man's doing. We got you. Because those practical levels of help usher in freedom in a way that you can't do by talking. And the other thing that's so important is for women to feel like somebody's got their back.
They're not in it alone, that they're
Exactly.
not
So
going to leap off a cliff.
we're
Yeah.
going to talk about it. We're going to have an open forum. I mean, because my membership program has that. And so you got that safety. But the next step is I'm encouraging you to take action. Well, Pathway to Freedom will be able to help in a very practical way. And I'm not looking at giving money willy-nilly. I'm giving specific situations that I know deeply, very surgical level obstacle removal.
Oh, I like obstacle removal. Nice. Well done.
Yeah. And so
That's awesome.
I'm
Congratulations.
really excited about that. And so, because my hope is to really help women have freedom. I see so much tragedy all the time. And it's just so sad that this is going on. And so I want to be part of the transformation of those lives and the kids that are with them.
Well, you are a part of our transformation today. And thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
sharing your journey with us,
Yes.
and I know people have given me the feedback that this podcast is such a transformation in their life. So having you reach their ears, I'm so grateful for that and grateful for your wisdom.
I'm thankful for the opportunity, Sarah.
Awesome. So tell them your website real quick again.
PatrickDoyle.life.
Awesome. Thank you, Patrick, for helping
bet.
us on our journey to become toxic person proof.
Yes.